It's December 1941. German soldiers are dug into frozen earth 20 miles from Moscow. They can see the city's spires through binoculars. Some units are so close they can hear the trams running. They've been fighting for 6 months. They're exhausted, they're freezing, and they're asking themselves a question that no one can answer. Why aren't we already there? The Red Army should have collapsed by now. Everyone said so. The plan depended on it. But here they are, outside the capital, and the Soviets are still fighting, still organized, still bringing up reserves that shouldn't exist. So why weren't they here sooner? There's a strange quality to that moment in December. It feels inevitable and impossible at the same time. The German advance has carried them farther than Napoleon ever got. They've encircled entire Soviet armies. They've captured millions of prisoners. By every measure, they've won. Except they haven't. The Red Army keeps reforming. New divisions keep appearing. Factories that should have been captured are operating somewhere in the Urals. The Soviet state, which should have shattered under the first blow, is still functioning. And now it's winter. The roads are gone. The vehicles won't start. The men don't have proper coats. The offensive that was supposed to end in weeks has turned into something no one planned for. A grinding, static battle in sub-zero temperatures against an enemy that refuses to quit. What's strange is that this didn't have to happen. The Wehrmacht could have reached Moscow months earlier. The route was open. The Red Army was reeling. Everything pointed toward a direct thrust at the capital, while the Soviets were still disorganized. But that's not what happened. The mistake wasn't made in winter, it was made in summer. Go back to August 1941. The invasion is 8 weeks old. Army Group Center has smashed through Belarus and is sitting just east of Smolensk. Moscow is 200 miles away. The forward units can practically taste it. The generals are begging to continue the advance. And then they're told to stop. Not stop fighting, stop advancing toward Moscow. The panzers are being redirected, some north toward Leningrad, most south toward Ukraine. The capital will have to wait. The debate inside German high command had been building for weeks. Hitler wanted Ukraine's resources and Leningrad's symbolic value. His generals wanted Moscow, the hub of Soviet rail, communications, and political authority. Both sides made reasonable arguments. Neither was obviously wrong. Ukraine mattered. The industrial capacity there was enormous. The agricultural output fed a significant portion of the Soviet Union, and there were Soviet forces threatening Army Group Center's southern flank. Ignoring them felt reckless. Leningrad mattered too. It was the birthplace of the revolution. Its fall would be a psychological blow, and the northern front couldn't just be left hanging. But Moscow was the nervous system of the entire country. Rail lines converged there. Orders radiated out from there. If the Soviet state was going to collapse, it would collapse when the capital fell. Hitler made the call. Ukraine and Leningrad first, Moscow later. The panzers turned south in late August. The diversion was spectacularly successful. The Germans encircled huge Soviet forces near Kiev. Over 500,000 prisoners were taken. It was one of the largest encirclements in military history. By October, Army Group South had secured most of Ukraine. Army Group North had nearly closed the ring around Leningrad. And Army Group Center was still sitting where it had been in August, waiting for its armor to come back. The problem wasn't that the decision was wrong. The problem was that it took time. Time is a strange resource in war. You don't notice it accumulating. There's no moment when you can point and say, this is when it mattered. But it compounds. Every day an offensive stalls is a day the defender can use. The Soviets were using it. In August, when the German advance paused, the Soviet leadership made a decision that would define the rest of the war. They began evacuating industry. Entire factories were dismantled, loaded onto trains and shipped east, beyond the Urals, out of reach of German bombers. Machine tools, workers, raw materials, everything that could be moved was moved. This wasn't a small operation. Over 1,500 major enterprises were relocated in the span of a few months. Tank factories in Kharkov were rebuilt in Chelyabinsk. Aircraft plants in Leningrad reappeared in Siberia. It was chaotic and brutal and desperately improvised. People worked in unheated buildings through the winter. Production dropped temporarily, but the industrial base survived. That takes time. Time to organize the trains. Time to dismantle the machinery. Time to ship it. Time to reassemble it. Time the Germans were giving them by not advancing. And while factories were being evacuated, the Red Army was reconstituting. The initial border units had been shattered, but the Soviet Union was enormous. Reserves were being pulled from Siberia, Central Asia, the Far East. Men who'd been guarding the border with Japan were now being loaded onto trains heading west. Fresh divisions, not well trained, not well equipped, but present. These units needed time to arrive, time to organize, time to dig in around Moscow. Then there were the fortifications. The Soviets started building defensive lines around the capital in July, but the work accelerated in September and October. Trenches, tank traps, gun emplacements. Civilian labor brigades worked around the clock. None of these defenses would have stopped the Wehrmacht in July. By November, they were formidable. Every week Germany wasn't advancing was a week the Soviet Union was reorganizing. Stalin's government had been on the edge of panic in July. By October, it had stabilized. Not because the situation was good, it was catastrophic, but because there was enough time to respond. The state didn't collapse because it was given the breathing room to adapt. And the Germans were coming back to face something different than what they'd left behind. By the time Army Group Center turned back toward Moscow in early October, the tactical situation had changed. The panzers that had been sent south came back depleted. They'd been fighting for 2 months straight. Vehicles needed maintenance they weren't getting. Crews were exhausted. Supply lines were stretched over 1,000 miles of dirt roads that turned to mud when the autumn rains came. The weather hit earlier than expected. October in Western Russia is usually manageable. In 1941, it rained constantly. The roads disappeared. German advances slowed to walking pace. Vehicles got stuck. Supply columns couldn't move. The offensive that was supposed to be a rapid thrust toward Moscow turned into a slog through knee-deep mud. Then the ground froze in November and movement became possible again. The Germans resumed the advance, and they ran into the Soviet defenses that hadn't existed in August. The Red Army was still outmatched. German forces reached the outskirts of Moscow. In some places, they got within sight of the Kremlin, but they couldn't break through. The Soviets had too many men now, too many guns, too many prepared positions. And the Wehrmacht was running on fumes. Ammunition was low, food was short. Medical supplies were gone. Frostbite cases were skyrocketing because winter uniforms hadn't arrived. Units were at half strength. The logistics system, stretched to its absolute limit, couldn't deliver what was needed to sustain an offensive. The decision to divert toward Ukraine had made sense in August, but the consequences were irreversible by December. There was no way to give those lost weeks back, no way to undo the time the Soviets had gained. Wars are decided by resources and strategy and leadership, but they're also decided by timing. A decision that makes sense in isolation can become fatal when you account for what it allows the enemy to do. Germany's 1941 campaign was built on speed. The entire operational concept depended on the Soviet Union collapsing before it could mobilize its vast reserves. The plan assumed the Red Army would be destroyed in the first months. It assumed the Soviet state would fragment under pressure. It assumed Moscow would fall before winter. All of those assumptions required one thing: continuous momentum. The diversion away from Moscow broke that momentum, not because it was a bad decision. Militarily, it achieved its objectives, but because it traded time for space, and time was the one resource the Soviets desperately needed. By the time German forces reached Moscow in December, they were fighting a different war against a different enemy. The disorganized, panicking state from June was gone. In its place was a system that had adapted, relocated, and mobilized. It was brutal and costly, and barely functional, but it was intact. The Soviet Union survived not because it was prepared, it survived because it was given time.